Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor, and I'm the Engineering Event Assistant for UBC Engineering at Vancouver. And I would like to take the time to recognize that I work on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. And so I would just like to thank everyone for joining us today as we're going to be talking about the second year placement program at UBC. And so please feel free to comment any questions you have so we can answer them. And so today we're going to be joined by two current students. We have Meghan and Carter, who will be sharing how they decided their programs and the placement process they went through. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Meghan, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's session. My name is Meghan. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. And I'm going into my fourth year at UBC, but my third year of chemical and biological engineering because I'm in the co-op program.
Carter, do you want to introduce yourself? I think Carter might be having some Wi-Fi issues, but Carter is in his second year of going into his third year of engineering physics at UBC. And so thank you guys so much for joining us today. And to begin with, I'm just going to talk a bit about the general placement process. And so UBC Engineering has a general first year where you'll be taking general classes like math, physics, coding, and chemistry before you specialize. And so this just makes sure that you have like a really strong foundation. And so another class you're going to be taking is called AppSci 100 and AppSci 101, which is an intro to engineering course where you're going to be learning about the different disciplines through different types of projects. And so just to give you guys an idea of the types of projects you will be doing, there's one where you'll be building like a robotic claw, which can help you be exposed to kind of like coding. There's another one where you work on like rainwater harvesting, which kind of shows you about environmental engineering and kind of geological. And so every couple of weeks, you're also going to be watching presentations on the different types of engineering, and you can attend open house events and panels to learn more. And so at the end of your first year, you're going to rank your programs and you're going to submit a personal statement for your first choice program. And so programs will take into consideration grades from your first year, as well as some programs might have additional interviews or steps. And so, Carter, you're in engineering physics, which is a program that requires an additional interview. So could you tell us a bit more about the interview process and what engineering physics is?
Yeah, of course. So sorry, guys, I froze a bit earlier, but so for like Taylor mentioned, you have an interview for engineering physics, and that's just a short interview with the head of engineering physics, Andre. And what that will entail is you shouldn't be nervous about that. I know interviews are a kind of nerve-wracking thing, but it's honestly an interview for him to help you ensure that engineering physics is the right program for you. So he's there to talk with you and make sure that that this is the right fit for you. And if not, he'll help guide you to a different one. But essentially, it's just a quick interview and you just chat about why you think you're a good fit for the program. And then you'll have a good chat about that. And usually it just ends up with him either saying, yeah, you're a great fit for this, or suggesting a program that would be a better fit. So that's about it.
So some people might not know what engineering physics is. So could you kind of tell us about what you guys study and like how the program's like?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a question that you'll get very used to answering if you join the program, because not a lot of people know. However, it is a really great one. One quick thing I'll say is I really didn't know what I wanted to do in first year. And the great thing about engineering physics is it's a bit of a mix of everything. So it's for students who really want to understand how things work and be able to apply that to their own solutions. So it's basically a mix of a bunch of the main engineering streams. So like computer engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. And then you also have the opportunity to dive into kind of some more deeper physics if that's what you're into. So that's the gist of it. I'm definitely happy to talk about it more, but that's the brief intro. So.
Thanks for giving some insight onto what it is. And so Meghan, you also mentioned that you're in chemical engineering. So could you kind of tell us like what you guys study and like how it is so far?
Yeah, for sure. So chemical engineering is essentially learning about different types of processes. So if you think of any type of industry or field, literally anything that has a process, you can bet that a chemical engineer is probably working on that. So I know stereotypically, like oil and gas is a very chemical engineering heavy industry and field, and you can learn about that as well in the program here at UBC. But there are just so many other places you can apply what you learned from the chemical engineering program here at UBC, and there's so many different industries you can get into. Specifically at UBC, we offer chemical engineering and chemical and biological engineering. Chemical engineering, that stream is more processed oil and gas, that kind of stuff. But the chemical and biological stream, which I'm in, focuses a lot on like the biological processes. So funny enough, before COVID-19 prevented us from going to school in person, I was working on a project on how to develop vaccines and what that bioprocess would look like and how we would get to that final product. And it doesn't have to be medically related or pharmaceutical related. It can go in multitude of directions, which is one reason why I chose it and I'm really enjoying it so far.
That's really great to hear. So I kind of talked a bit before about like what the personal statement is and how you're going to be writing it for your first choice program. And so Carter, I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about what the personal statement is and kind of like what you can write about.
Yeah, of course. So the personal statement is just for the evaluators at UBC to ensure that you are choosing a program that you're gonna do well in and enjoy. So it's just to benefit you, honestly. But the what you'll want to chat about is just once again why you think you're a good fit for the program, and you can dive into what happened in first year that kind of you had that, oh yeah, that's what I want to do moments, or maybe ever since you were like 8 years old, you knew you wanted to do it. But either way, you kind of want to chat about why you want to do this program, and then also maybe talk into why you think you might maybe be qualified for it. Like maybe you did design team and you said I did electrical stuff, so I really want to do electrical engineering. So anything like that, but just the basic idea is talk about why you want to do the program and why you think you'd be a good fit.
Great. And so on that like note, like Megan, do you think you could give any advice for first year engineers what they can do to like find the program that they're interested in? Because I know some people go into UBC engineering and they're not really sure what they want to do. And they're like, there's so many different specializations at UBC. So do you have any advice what they can do to like find what they're interested in?
Yeah, for sure. I personally came into UBC kind of knowing I wanted to do chemical engineering, but obviously I wanted to learn about all of them first before making my final decision, because when you do choose your program, you rank all 14. So it's kind of crazy when you do that, but it's really good that they do this so you can take the time to get to know each program. So in first year, there's going to be a bunch of different things that happen that will kind of encourage, or you're going to be given information on all the programs. In your classes, AppSci 100 and 101, they will do presentations on all the different disciplines where a professor from that department will come in and talk about what the program is. In addition to that, UBC hosts a bunch of different events for students to, one, learn about UBC engineering, but also about their department. So there's the engineering open house, which normally takes place in November. Correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor. Every single department will have a booth along with engineering design teams. So you can always walk around, look at what the design teams are working on, but you can also ask current students and professors questions about the program. So that's another great resource or thing to check out if you're not quite sure or want to learn about more. Another thing that usually happens closer to when you have to fill out the form for what disciplines you want to do or in ranking your choices, a lot of different departments and programs will host information sessions. So you can go, oh, see, perfect. Erin just put in the chat, November 6th this year for the open house. But a lot of departments host their own information sessions. So if you have any questions or want to talk to more current students, maybe talk to the academic advising of that department, you can go to those information sessions. I know chemical engineering, CHIBI, that's the short form here at UBC. They'll get used to all the short forms eventually, or the acronyms. They hosted an information session, and that was a really good opportunity for me to go ask questions that I had and to really make sure that that was the program I wanted to do and get into.
And so now that you guys have been in your specializations, I'm just wondering, like, how are you finding them so far? Because a lot of times, like, you'll think that maybe your specialization is like one way, and then now that you guys are actually in it, like, how do you find it? And so, Carter, could you tell us a bit about how engineering physics is going for you so far?
Yeah, of course. So there's a few unique things about engineering physics that I've got to experience so far. So one thing is in the summer of second year, there's this robot building competition you'll get to do. So right now the past few weeks, I've been getting together with a few of my classmates and we're building a robot from the ground up. Like we're making the electronics ourselves or making all the designs ourselves. So that's one thing I've been doing. So that's been really fun. And another thing that I really enjoyed about the program is that it's very career oriented. One thing I wanted to go into engineering for obviously is I wanted to possibly get an engineering job after I graduate, right? That was kind of my goal. And engineering physics has a very strong reputation with co-ops, especially in Vancouver. The vast majority of engineering physics students will end up getting co-op placements. Just last January to April, I got to work at a startup for 4 months, which was a really great experience. But overall, I found it to be a great fit. And one other thing about many of the programs at UBC is you have the opportunity to kind of tailor the program into kind of your interests. So, for example, for engineering physics, a lot of students really enjoy software and coding, and there's lots of opportunities to take technical electives to learn more about that. So that's also another thing I enjoy about the program. But overall, it's been a pretty good experience.
And Megan, how has your experience in chemical been so far? Also, everyone is reminded to use the chat if you have any questions as we talk.
Yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed chemical engineering. I will say as a caveat, don't join chemical engineering if you're just interested in chemistry. I know I originally was thinking that at first. That's why I kind of was drawn to it. But then once I learned a bit more about the program, I kind of slowly learned you use chemistry, not necessarily learning it in a lot of detail. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done my third or fourth year yet because I was just on co-op for the past year. One thing with Chibi that I find or chemical engineering is there is a ton of different co-op opportunities, or not, say a decent amount. Everyone in the program usually gets a co-op, but also how the variety of different jobs that you can get. Words, what are those? So you could go work in the food industry. You can go work in pharmaceuticals, as I touched on, oil and gas. Maybe even building operations or other things like that. Anything that requires a process, it's a really great program so you can get all that experience out. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it because I don't necessarily know what industry I want to work on after I graduate, but getting exposure to all these different industries and learning about all of them has been really great for me. So I can kind of pick and choose my interests. As for the classes, the community in chemical engineering, I find is really great. Everyone gets along really well. They're always really supportive of each other. And I know the capstone projects are always really fun as well. So I'm excited to get to that point in my degree. But I've been having a blast, so I can't say much else other than that.
Great. And so just to kind of answer some of the questions in the chat that are kind of asking more about like specific types of engineering, I'm personally in geological engineering, but I can kind of give like a brief rundown about some of the other types of engineering. So in mechanical engineering, there is like a type of general, it's called like Mech 2 program that people go into. And mechanical engineering is one of those programs where you're able to specialize in your third year. And as for environmental, so as I'm in geological engineering, we do take a lot of similar classes. And so in your environmental engineering classes, you are taking specific environmental classes, but you're also sometimes taking things that are related to chemical engineering. And I think it's really important to highlight in any type of engineering you pick, you are going to be taking classes from so many different streams. Like in geological engineering, I've been able to take civil engineering classes, some mining engineering classes. So whatever type of engineering you pick, you will be taking classes from other disciplines. And so some of the other questions, if you hypothetically realize your chosen discipline in second year is not for you, is there any flexibility to switch afterwards? I think Erin can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically you will receive your second choice placement in around July, and there is an opportunity to have an appeal. But oftentimes I find that most people will go into their specialization, and then if they don't get it, they actually are quite happy with their second choice and are like content with where they end up. And if Erin wants to kind of add onto the flexibility choosing between different types of engineering, you can.
I mean, that's pretty much it. So there's a few options that if you go through this second year placement process and you get a program that you weren't planning on, there is the interdepartmental transfer that you can do. So you'll complete your second year in the program you were placed in, and then you can apply for an interdepartmental transfer that will look at your second year grades. That still is based on space available in those programs. Otherwise, you can appeal if there are certain reasons that may warrant an appeal, so extenuating circumstances. But most students will get into one of their top choices anyways. So about 90% of students get in one of their top 3 choices usually. So if you're ranking all 14 programs in order of preference, as Taylor mentioned, a lot of programs are very similar to each other. But that's also what is great about first year, is to explore all of those programs and define which ones maybe you are most excited about, but which ones are also going to lead to a similar career path, because you can go into a lot of different disciplines of engineering and still end up in a very similar career afterwards. So it's kind of thinking in the long term of what would go lead you there.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. And so just to answer some of the other questions, do courses taken during your summer count for placement GPA? No, typically it is the classes that you are taking during your winter session that are taken into account. And then is there a specific admission average cutoff for each specialization type? So typically the admission average cutoff will vary year by year, but it's also really important to understand that your personal profile is looked after. And it also does depend sometimes what you are putting as your first or second choice, which can kind of change too. So I think it's just definitely going into a mentality like work as hard as you can, and then just really expose yourself to different types of engineering so you have a clearer idea of what you're interested in. There are some programs that are typically more competitive than others. Typically computer engineering, mechanical engineering, and also engineering physics are the most competitive. And so some of the other questions are, how did you guys land your co-ops? And was it through personal research or through UBC? And so I know that both of you guys have done co-op recently. So if Carter, if you wanted to start about how you got your co-op experience, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I just mentioned in the chat there, but I actually got my co-op position through one of my friends on the design team I was in first year. One thing you'll learn, and I'm still learning about, is networking is a very big skill that you get to learn at university. And so I had a friend on the design team that knew an employer looking for a student to fill up a position, and they gave me a reference, and one thing led to another, and I ended up getting the job. But on top of that, I have lots of friends who just kind of applied like through a cover letter and a resume through the co-op system, and they still got a job without knowing anyone beforehand. So it can go both ways.
So Megan, how was your process finding your co-op job?
I didn't get mine through a reference, but similar to Carter's friends, I applied through the co-op job board for my first co-op with UBC Building Operations. And then this past year, I've been working at Fortis BC here in Vancouver. And the way I applied for that, I wasn't supposed to be on co-op, so I wasn't supposed to have access to the job portal, but their job applications were posted online. So I applied through there. There's a bunch of different ways you can get jobs. It can be through references. If you have connections, as you'll learn about networking if you do join the co-op program, you can always get it through there as well. And then on top of that, just looking online, maybe there's some jobs that aren't posted on the co-op portal that the co-op office has put together. But usually that's pretty comprehensive, and it's a really great platform to look through all your applications and look through all the resumes or cover letters that you've written.
Yeah, that's super helpful. UBC has a really helpful co-op department, which helps like people find jobs all the time. And so some of the other questions are, how many people are in each specialization? And so I think this really varies depending on the specialization. I know some programs like electrical engineering have a lot of spots. And then there's others like, for example, I'm in geological, which we have around 40 people. And Carter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think engineering physics is quite a small program also. Yeah, so Carter said there's around 60 people. And so I think it's just really important to go into first year engineering, knowing that you're going to be exposed to so many different types of engineering. And you can be going into your first year thinking you're going to do one thing, and then you can be so interested in maybe a different class along the way. Like I remember when I was going into first year, I thought I wanted to do chemical. And then just along the way, I was just exposed to different types of engineering and eventually found what I wanted to do. So there's definitely no pressure. It can seem super daunting sometimes not knowing what you want to do. And so another question is kind of more related to co-op. It's when are students eligible to apply for co-op, and is it after your second year? And yeah, that is right. It typically is after your first year that you can apply for co-op, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
second or third year, you can apply for co-op.
and so if anyone has any other questions, just write them in the chat.
I will mention also that there is a recording from the session we did about co-op. So several weeks ago, or maybe months ago now, we did have a live session like this about co-op. So you can find that in the first year Facebook group to see more about kind of what that co-op program is like.
So another question we have is, was there any classes that pushed you closer to making a decision about your discipline? So Megan and Carter, was there any one class that kind of helped you realize what you wanted to do?
I mean, there's not a lot of chemical engineering related courses in first year. The only close one would probably be, well, AppSci 100 and 101 are design based courses, which is applicable to all of them. And then there's your chemistry class. And then you also do thermodynamics and physics 157, which I'd say is very applicable. I kind of made my decision based on my design team, which I see someone asked the question about after, but I'll let Carter answer first.
Yeah, for sure. There's a good variation of courses you'll take in first year. Just as much as a course might lead you to one, it also might lead you away from another. For example, I didn't love chemistry. I wasn't great at it. So unlike Megan, I stayed clear of chemical engineering. And then you'll have to take a coding class first year and maybe you'll go, okay, I really like CPEN. So I've definitely seen a lot of people who've been experienced by that. And then I was one of them who was maybe stay clear of one because of it. But for sure, classes will help you realize what you want to do and what you don't want to do.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then another question is, through your first year, will you have the opportunity to talk to students in the specialization we're planning on going to? And the answer is yes. There are so many different open houses where you can ask current students and even professors about it. There's also a lot of panels that are hosted throughout the year where you can ask current students. And so this just really helps you get a clear idea of what the student experience is. Because one thing I find really important about UBC engineering is each little specialization has so much culture to it. There's so many undergraduate clubs you can join. There's also like club rooms where you can interact with people from your specialization. Like there really just is different communities and networks within each different specialization. And so the next question is, do I need AppSci 160 and AppSci 101 to be eligible for second year placement? And so this is more of an advising question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need around 27 credits to be considered for your second year. So as long as you have 27 credits completed from your first year classes, you will be able to apply for second year placement. And so
but you will still need to complete those courses at some point, and they may be prerequisites for upper year courses as well. So I'd recommend talking to engineering academic services if you are planning to not take those courses in first year for some reason.
Yeah, that is a great answer. And so there's some questions that are asking to give a quick rundown of CPEN and kind of what it entails and how many students are selected. I don't specifically know how many students are selected for CPEN, but I know that Carter, you've taken a couple of CPEN classes. Could you share maybe your experiences on those?
Yeah, one thing that I'm still even learning about is I guess the difference between computer science and computer engineering. That's definitely a question I had, and I definitely talking to some computer engineering students. They go a bit more into, I guess, the inner workings of kind of machine code or kind of how a computer works. But not to go into it into too much of anything. The idea is you'll get an understanding of how to write software, how to code, and then also some more of the hardware of it. So yeah, that might go over your head. Honestly, it still goes over mine a little bit, but it's the gist of it is you'll get to learn about software, and I guess in essence too how a computer works will be part of it. But that's the brief introduction.
To build off of what Carter said, my boyfriend's actually in computer engineering, and I still don't fully understand what he does, but he also doesn't fully understand what I do either. Essentially what Carter said, it's a mix of software and hardware, because in computer science, you're only getting that software bit. So they do a lot of, they also build robots. They also build a lot of the hardware that you might use for different computers. And the computer engineering and electrical engineering is one department, because you'll find that a lot of computer engineering students, I don't know about electrical, I can't speak for that, will take electrical engineering related courses, because that's more related to the actual hardware of computers, and some of those courses are very applicable to what they may be doing in the future. I do not know how many people get in. I just know how many friends I have in computer engineering, which I don't think is very helpful, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely helps like paint a clear picture of what computer engineering entails. And so just like to respond to the question about when writing the personal statement, is it better to include a certain experience over another? What they want us to talk about are time and design teams or first year courses or personal long life interests. So I think definitely kind of like I think what Carter just wrote, design teams can help, but they aren't like a requirement. I think when they're looking at your personal statement, they just really do want to see passion and interest for what you are saying that you want to study. In mine personally, I wasn't in a design team when I applied to my specialization. I was just talking about how this was something I enjoyed reading in my free time, and how an earth science class I had taken in first year just made me really realize why I was so passionate about geological engineering. And so I think it's just really talking about kind of the experience you do have, but also just what you want to get out of the program and why you're passionate about going into it. And so there was also a comment about minors, but as Erin mentioned, minors are optional and you can apply for them in your second or third year. And so I think it'd be really helpful, Megan and Carter, do you kind of want to talk about maybe like what you talked about in your personal profile? Megan, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. As I kind of also typed in the chat as well, I was in a design team in my first year, and I was going to be co-captain in my second year. So I wrote a lot about how the design team kind of helped influence my choice as well. A lot of why I wanted to do chemical engineering wasn't based on the design team, but it kind of solidified that decision. I lived in Indonesia for 5 years, and just being a part of that environment, I really wanted to help communities and help better build better infrastructure and find other more efficient processes that were more sustainable from that experience. So I kind of pulled on that in my personal life experience, but also from what the design team taught me and how I wanted to continue to grow that group and how that was going to continue to help me develop as an engineering student. You can, like I've heard people throw in like fun things like, oh, I love sports. I know a lot of programs really just want to see if you're passionate about something and if you're really going to put your all into the program. So if you have a really good reason why you want to do it and you can show that you're really passionate and excited to learn, I'd say you're pretty set with that.
How about you, Carter?
Yeah, no, Megan and Taylor covered it pretty good. It's the gist of it is just explaining why you're interested in the program. So for me, I talked about how I thought engineering physics was really career oriented and I really wanted co-op experience. So talking about that. And then I talked about my design team a bit and how I got to see kind of interdisciplinary work on design team and how I was interested in that. But while I'm on the topic too, definitely like don't feel like you need to take a design team in order to get into a program. Take it if you want to and if you think it's fun. And then also you can always go and try it out. And if you think it's not for you, it's totally okay. So design teams aren't like a concrete thing where you need to do one to get into a program. That's absolutely not true. But they definitely, I found that my design team helped me figure out what I wanted to do. So that's one benefit I saw.
Yeah, thank you. And just kind of adding on to design teams, we do have a live session that kind of talk more about design teams and also just like people share their experiences on them. So you can definitely check that out if you have more questions about design teams. And then do you write a personal profile to each discipline you're applying to? No, you kind of just have one for your first choice. And so I just want to encourage everyone, if they have more questions, to ask them in the first year engagement program or in the first year Facebook group. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us today, and especially to Meghan and Carter for sharing their experiences with us. And so we hope this session was able to give you a bit of insight onto how the second year placement works, but you can also continue to ask questions, like I said before, in the first year Facebook group, where you can talk with more incoming and current students in the first year engagement program. And so before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask both Meghan and Carter, if you were in the shoes of our incoming students, would you have any advice for them? And Carter, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So one thing I'll say right away too is like I think I'm pretty proud of you guys. Honestly, you guys are ahead of it. I wasn't looking into stuff so early. So you guys are killing it. Honestly, don't stress out too much. Like there's lots of support and all. Lots of people. Everyone's in the same boat in first year. So the friends you make will be able to help each other out with deciding. So don't stress out too much, and honestly, just enjoy your summer, relax. But everything will fall into place with second year. It sounds really stressful and complicated and scary, but it's honestly not as bad as you feel right now. So don't worry too much.
Completely agree with Carter. There's so many resources and so many great things, and everything will fall into place. One big piece of advice that I would have wanted to give myself in first year was grades aren't everything. I know personally my average not as high as it was in high school after my first year, which is perfectly fine. Another thing that I really value is doing extracurricular activities. So that may require some time and maybe your grades may not be as high, but I find that my personal happiness is much greater now that I'm doing all these extracurricular activities, doing different clubs. I even have some part-time jobs and really getting involved in the UBC community. That's something that I've really loved doing. And speaking of being involved in things, I am one of the senior orientation leaders for the engagement program. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me through the Microsoft Teams there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much again for joining, and thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you so much and have a good night, guys.